Shabbat Shalom and good morning. Do you happen to know the book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? It's a charming introduction for children to understand how one thing leads to another. If you give a mouse a cookie, we learn, he'll ask for a glass of milk, and then he'll need a napkin to wipe his mouth and whiskers. And when he does, he'll notice that his whiskers need a bit of a trim, and so he'll ask for scissors, and so on, until it returns full circle to that same mouse asking, spoiler alert, yes, for a cookie. And looking back, the reader or the listener can see how the path evolved, leading back to that ubiquitous cookie at the start of the story, its origin. The same is true of family gatherings, which tend to come full circle as well. Take Thanksgiving. Many families have joyfully reunited this year with a renewed zeal for gathering. Happy to be around the same table again, they could not wait to reconstitute their favorite holiday just as they had remembered it, as it had always been, as it should be. And so they may have volunteered to bring exactly what they had always brought, whether it was Grandma's favorite cornbread or pumpkin pie made from Cousin Morty's secret recipe, or a cookie. There is comfort in familiarity, and I would venture that the conversation likely had its familiar turns as well. Before anyone ever arrived, we already knew who would be loud and overbearing, who would have insightful social commentary, and who would ignite the exchange by introducing politics again, and who would be left to help with the cleanup. Kind of like Passover without the written script. But every now and then, someone brings a guest whose presence changes the pattern entirely and shatters the paradigm. And thereafter, the cantankerous uncle may surprise you with a gentle comment. The boisterous cousin may be silenced by an exchange. And what we may have expected shifts because someone or something changes the dynamics. And that is the energy of unexpected opportunities, of possibilities evident in our parasha Toldot, which Chase read so beautifully. Early in the portion, we learn that the twin brothers, Jacob and Esau, each of whom are favored by different parents, had come to a surprising agreement, that the elder Esau was willingly giving up his birthright to his younger sibling Jacob, something that was unheard of and shocking because the firstborn had special privileges. Yet when Esau's day of hunting had failed, and he came home famished, seemingly to the point of death, he found Jacob tending a pot of stew, red stew, which in that moment Esau valued more than his inheritance. Esau gave up his birthright to satiate his hunger. And while they came to this agreement on their own, it wasn't clear if anyone else was aware of it, which is an important consideration when it came time for their father Isaac to bless them. Near the end of his life, Isaac called his firstborn Esau in and asked him to hunt and prepare the meal he enjoyed most, as a prelude to bestowing the blessing over that firstborn. Now we know that different parents parent differently. Rebecca, having overheard their conversation, had another plan in mind for Jacob, the child she favored. And she rushed to preempt the blessing by preparing Isaac's request. And at the same time, she insisted that Jacob present himself to his nearly blind father as if he were in fact Esau. Rebecca demonstrated her commitment to her decision when she dressed Jacob in hairy goatskins so he could be mistaken for his hirsute brother, and Isaac would have plausible deniability. It was a sequence of events that later would emerge as something known as an organizational theory called contingency theory. Originating in the Midwest in the 1950s, it explains that there is no best way to make decisions. Instead, the optimal course is contingent or dependent upon the internal and external situation. And we know from the flow chart in our own lives that every decision we have made has led us to a certain path. And looking back, we can see the route more clearly than we could when we were deciding among the choices before us. And though they may be small, every action we have performed has brought us to where we stand today. The Pirkei Avot, the ethical tractate of the Babylonian Talmud, both admonishes and asserts one mitzvah brings another in its wake, and one sin follows another. So our ancestors imply that one builds upon the next, leading to a predictable and ideally desired outcome. And while we can't know the outcome of every decision we make, we have to be guided by the intention behind it. Generations of readers have been floored by the sequence of events in this portion. At every turn in this drama, each participant had to weigh their choices, and in that very moment, determine how they would act and how far they were willing to go. As readers, we may have had a visceral urge to break into the story and offer them guidance, redirecting the outcome of the encounter. Rebecca talked to Isaac about how Jacob is better suited to carry this legacy forward, we'd insist. Jacob, don't wear the goatskins. Just go to your father. Explain how Esau had already given up the birthright and how you deserve this. And while the narrative would have remained unchanged, as Rabbi Reines already explained, the process would have had more integrity. So let's return to the portion to ask, was Isaac really deceived, or was he somehow complicit? As the stew was set before him, Isaac questioned his son repeatedly, giving Jacob the chance to look at himself before he committed to the lie. "Which one of my sons are you?" he asked. "And how did you succeed so quickly, my son?" To which Jacob responded, "Because the Lord your God granted me good fortune." But Isaac probed further. "Come closer," Isaac said, "so that I may feel you, whether you are really my son Esau or not." And ultimately Isaac observed, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, yet the hands are the hands of Esau. Throughout, Jacob knew that so much was at stake, as well as his last remaining responsibility, which was to transmit the tradition that he had received. The Plaut Torah commentary explains how Isaac made peace with his decision to go ahead and bless Jacob after all. It rested on a single word. A midrash clarifies that the moment Isaac heard his son mention God's name, he knew it was Jacob and not Esau. Ultimately, that single word gave Isaac the confidence, the knowledge he needed to bless this child and set into motion what would become the history of our people, which is now our legacy. Both Rebekah and Isaac were guided by the same intention, the transmission and continuity of our tradition, though they approached it from very different means. And while we are B'nai Israel, the children of Israel, our tradition does not excuse Jacob's behavior. He suffered from lifelong guilt, and he carried a fear that Esau would take retribution. In his dealings with his father-in-law Laban, Jacob was on the receiving end of manipulation. And still, Jacob did grow. He was the dreamer, the one who merited the name Yisrael, whose wrestling with God is a facet of our religious personality as Jews, as inheritors of this legacy. If there is one lesson that we can take from this portion, it is one that you lifted up as well, Chase, and that is of personal growth. That with every decision, we are shaping our future and our ability to become better people and to be worthy of the name Yisrael. So just one more word, Chase. To be so vulnerable takes tremendous strength. Your personal example of growth teaches us how a series of small acts can be redemptive, empowering, and lead to a life that is admirable. As a bar mitzvah, you honor our tradition now and in the future through your choices and your decisions. May you always go from strength to strength and blessing to blessing, surrounded as you are today by so many who love you. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be so.